Hey everyone, I'm David Berkowitz from AI Marketers Guild, part of Marketecture, with another edition of AI Insiders, and one I'm especially excited about because we have one of our favorite friends of the community, Caroline Giegerich at IAB, who yet again, when they're coming out with some of their seminal reports that touch on AI and have implications for all of us in the marketing space, she loves to share this in this very interactive form here, and it's all to Caroline's credit of assembling this incredible panel, who I will let you introduce, Caroline. So welcome back. Great to see you. You've got a record for AI Insiders appearances, so thanks for continuing the streak.
A record. Does that mean I get a Rolex watch or some other gift?
Probably get you a T-shirt or something, or mug,
T-shirt.
like,
Is it going to
yeah.
talk about vibe coding? Because this is what I expect from me.
Well, I'll get working on that. So.
We need merch for AI
Mhm.
insiders.
Oh man, now there's some competition, by the way, with Nate Elliott, who who wants to like give you a run for your money there with appearances. So yeah, we've got some heavy hitters in the room here.
I saw a whole bunch of people that I know here. I saw Paul, I saw Katie, I saw Christina. Of course, we have our very highly esteemed panelists, and I am going to go ahead and introduce them. But first, if you would give me a few moments of your time, I'd love to show you just a few, I promise only a few slides of what this work is. So you can just have a good, let's call it amuse-bouche before we get into the conversation with these much smarter people than myself. So if I can, I'm just going to share my screen and show you a few slides of this work so you can kind of wrap your head around it, and then of course get into the discussion at hand. So it's called Measuring Visibility in the AI Era. The folks that you're about to hear from were in this working group, and we can't do this work without them. Now, this is an obvious thing, but it's worth mentioning again. We had Google search, a page of 10 blue links you can choose and click through. We've moved to an and. You've got ChatGPT, Gemini, Copilot, or your other LLM of choice giving you a written answer and condensing that down for you. Okay. The channel that fed brands and publishers is shrinking, and I'm sure some of us can argue this, but there has been a decline in search traffic from these answers, and I've put a few data points here. But as a result, we are looking at these answers. We're trying to figure out, well, if you're a brand, how do I get in the answer? If you're a publisher, what is my weight in that measurement? There are a lot of folks who are looking at visibility and measurement. Some of them are about to speak to you and know this space much better than I do. But unfortunately, there was really no standard framework for what are the metrics? How do we think about measurement? There was just a lot of different thoughts in the space. Now, for those of you who don't know me, I came from many, many years on the brand side. I worked in television for many years, and I worked at Warner Music Group right before this role. So I'm always thinking, like, what is the challenge the marketer is dealing with? And the challenge I would have if I was still on that side was, oh my gosh, well, how do I choose how to move forward? Because before we get to GEO and AEO, whatever acronym you all prefer, you first have to have really good measurement, because you have to decide what are the recommendations based on that measurement. So that's what we focused on. We came up with a lexicon, the 4 Ps of AI visibility, so we could really just categorize all of the different metrics. But from a high level, it's presence. Does the brand appear or is the publisher cited? Prominence, where in the answer and how prominently. In the web era, when I was out there designing websites, we used to call it above the folds, right? But now you can scroll, 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 and an AI answer, maybe it's bolded, maybe it's bulleted, but all of this is different. Prominence. Portrayal, in what context and with what accuracy? I know our esteemed panelists are going to talk about this one. This one's the one that, frankly, I would stay up thinking about at night if I was still on the brand side. What's the sentiment? What's the framing? Is there some sort of hallucination or inaccuracy in the answer? And then persuasion, does that visibility actually drive action? We tried to narrow down what does directional measurement look like versus decision grade. That's not to say that one or the other is better per se. It's just different measurement for different use cases. So on the left side, you've got directional measurement that provides early signal and trends. On the right side, you've got more decision grade. That's more precise. That's more things that you would use for budget type decisions. Both of these are legitimate. And then finally, and I know we're gonna talk a lot about this as well. If you're asking the LLM a question, you're gonna get different answers. So how do you think about visibility when AI platforms aren't deterministic, right? You're getting a range. So you can see on the right side of this slide, it's not like share of voice is exactly this. It could be a range, and measurement is happening different times of day. Different measurement vendors have different, I'm sure Justin will talk about how he's thinking about it on his side, but in some report ranges, not single numbers. If you would like to read more about this, I believe Alyssa is going to put a link in. Also, there's a QR code. I'll mention that at IAB, we have something called Project ADOS, where we look at measurement far and wide. This is underneath this. And I would be remiss if I didn't include Catherine O'Hara from Schitt's Creek in every single presentation I've done for the past year. So here you have it. I'm going to park it there so I can introduce our amazing panelists. I'm going to start with Ihab Rizk, Senior Product Manager from Microsoft AI, Justin Inman, Founder and CEO of Emberos, and Simon Poulton, EVP Innovation at Tinuiti. Hi, guys. Lovely to see you always. So I'm going to start with the big, broad question, even though I just did a few slides on what we're talking about here. When we say AI visibility, what are we actually trying to understand, and why does it matter so much right now?
I think the moment in time is one where we're observing the fact that SEO in particular had been left behind, both from a investment perspective as well as from a measurement perspective. And so as this moment has caught up with everyone, we've seen this decline of clicks, there is this shift toward a moment in time where we need to talk beyond the click. We need to think critically about how is influence happening within LLMs. It's not necessarily going to result in a click. So that's why we are caring and thinking more about visibility. So we're really moving from rankings and clicks to this idea of influence and sentiment.
Anyone else have an idea? Is it Justin? Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that the discovery shift thing, right, from those links that you've mentioned earlier to the conversation. So a lot of what's happening right now in this shift is outside of the real estate of those brands and publishers. So AI visibility kind of covers the how am I actually being reached and how am I actually being conveyed to these end users and consumers without actually having much control. So this is effectively what we're trying to do with AI visibility measurement.
I think just maybe from a broader standpoint, I talked to a lot of marketers, like that the thing that I think marketers are starting to wake up to is that for the very first time ever, the traditional marketing funnel where information, consideration, intent, and purchase, like those were different tactics and strategies that marketers had to think about traditionally. And I think that some cases of well-oiled machine, because it was, that nothing was really changing that much. For the first time ever, I think that they're seeing this as a channel that all of those pieces of the marketing funnel could happen through a single channel. And so AI visibility is the baseline kind of metrics that they have to look at when they're thinking about all of these different like areas where consumers could be living from discovery to actual purchase now. And they need some type of metric to be able to build upon. And I think the AI visibility metric is the first starting point of that.
I think that's a really smart point. I also, after years of building apps and websites and all the things, as a marketer, just having this knowledge that you have less control based on another piece of technology that is bringing information either in it or not in it for reasons you're trying desperately to understand, I think is unnerving, is the word I want to use. But what is making it so hard for either brands or publishers to understand their own visibility in these AI answers for any of you?
Simon, I'm sure you have a very strong point of view on this.
I do, but I'd love to, you in the space building the tooling here. I think like you must have a very motivated point of view as to why.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's incredibly noisy, right? And I think it's a different muscle that I think large organizations are starting to wake up and realize that like it's not just an SEO problem. And so it's an organizational like structure issue that they have to like rethink about this, because it is from our point of view, it's your entire digital footprint, right? It's not just your own site that is getting cited into these LLMs. It is the PR piece. It's the creators now are coming in and being publishers themselves and driving a lot of influence in these LLM outputs. It's your Reddit and LinkedIn and social and who's talking about you. So paid, owned, earned, and shared. All of those things are now interconnected, where organizations today have historically built walls in between those parts of their organization. And so I think the smartest marketers are seeing like, oh no, this is a brand coherence and orchestration like issue that we have to think about restructuring ourselves, and where does that fit into our organization? Does it fit? I think SEO is they're familiar with the kind of like this landscape, but it is an orchestration piece that that you have to rethink about it. And so I think when we work across a bunch of different verticals, it's just depending on how the organization is set up, and if they can adapt pretty quickly to this net new world. And each vertical, each type of company offers a different set of challenges, whether that's from an organization standpoint or consumer shifts. Like, are consumers actually asking like, what should I do this weekend for entertainment? Like it's a whole set of issues and problems that I think are very specific and nuanced by each one of the verticals that we talk to. And so I think having a big blanketed statement on top of it is hard, but because it's definitely more nuanced than that. But I would say the biggest thing that we see today is organizational structure. Because so many people are getting involved in this now. It's the PR teams because they want to see that their work is getting cited. It's the social teams because they're now waking up and saying all of our social stuff is getting cited as well. The influencer team, right? The creator teams are seeing that as well. So it's like it's just the walls are starting to collapse a lot, and we haven't had to. The organizations haven't had to exercise that muscle because it didn't exist before. Maybe it exists in some pockets, but not to the level that it is today.
And really quick follow-up, but any of you can then take it in whatever direction you want. Do you think those teams are motivated to start communicating better together? Because in my experience in the past, it was also just those teams weren't motivated. Like e-com and PR were, in some respects, sort of anti each other. So do you see now that those teams are waking up and thinking, oh, well, we better communicate better now?
Yeah, and I actually love Todd's point here. The walls collapsed for the consumers long ago. The brand's just behind. Yeah, that's like kind of how everything works too. Yeah, I think they're highly motivated now, and I think they are. I'll say that in certain organizations they're highly motivated. In other
Well, and Todd worked at Colgate in e-com, so I bet you he can get him sat and have a good thought about this.
Yeah, like I mentioned entertainment. I work with studios, and like the PR team is very separate than the marketing team, and so that's still kind of a challenge there. But I would say smaller, more nimble organizations that maybe have brand management kind of like in the center. I think those are ones that probably will succeed quicker because they've already tapped into all these teams. But that's my point of view. I'm sure, Simon, you have one as well.
I mean, just on this, one of my observations has been that there's a bit of a land grab that's happening in certain organizations, and there is a budget component to this. So as they are thinking about how should we communicate, how should we own this, there is this consideration of, well, does it mean there's more budget for this? Because they can, you make that fluid across some of these other PR activities, for example, that we're doing. But then at the crux of this is the measurement problem. I think that is where we started this part of the conversation, which is, yes, there's a people problem, but the measurement problem is quite robust. And one of the things that does trouble me still is this N of one moment that I think we're really going toward. And I've been calling it context debt. And it really is this idea that the experiences that I have within an LLM, we know that they are quite different across the board, but the more information it gets about me, the more tailored it gets to me. I took a picture of my kid's toy room pretty recently. I said, on ChatGPT, I said, make this a great toy room, and it'll do all these things. And then it did it, gave me a picture and said, would you like me to find this at Ashley Furniture? And I thought, why Ashley Furniture? What have they done that is so incredible that they are winning everything? Turns out 6 months ago, my wife had asked me to put a picture of a bed in our guest room from Ashley Furniture. And I looked at that and I was like, I bet I'm the only person in the world that is getting this experience right now, where Ashley Furniture is so tailored to me. And I look at that and go, how do you measure that? That is such a hard component of this moment in time, because there's no sampling that will give you that. And that's where I really struggle with this too, for brands internally making the case to see who should own it, and then how do you get budget for it.
Well, can we drill down on that for a second? Because I think memory is actually one of the most confounding pieces of this for me. Because as memory in the LLMs gets better and better and better, exactly what Simon's talking about is shifting wildly from, oh, let's just get better at our structured data and do more creator support, to, well, how do you solve for that? So, Ihab or Justin, I would love to know how you're taking into account the idea of memory.
Yeah, I mean, I can go and just mention it out here. Like, I think there's a lot of work being done with the whole trying to understand the context of all these platform measurement vendors trying to understand and give tools and finite granular options to adjust the context of these prompts and these measurements, such as location, trying to assess them over time so that there's seasonality as well, and model versions. But there's an aspect definitely when it comes to memory where you can't really do that. So I've seen a couple of options out there where or vendors out there that actually portray different personas as part of those reports, which was quite interesting, because you can actually set up that persona for someone who's in this region with these interests, and try to assess the visibility for those. That's the closest I've seen to what I would say as memory or context, right? But I also think there's an aspect that might not have been developed yet, or maybe we're working towards it, whereby there's a consideration layer, right? So all these models and platforms need to actually go through and sift through all this data to be able to provide the answer to those different contexts or different personas, and this consideration layer kind of is now being being assessed as to whether we can actually promote specific businesses through paid for consideration, for example. So like, as a business, I would want to be considered, and ultimately it's up to the AI platform to decide whether it wants to pick up that piece of information or not. And this is sort of like a proxy to like targeting in the AI platform side of this world, right? Or this shift compared to like targeting in ads or in search engines, right? At least that's how I see that.
Are you referencing like paid ChatGPT ad? Is that what you're referencing? Yeah, like what is the
not
like Flobian ones?
the timing piece?
Yeah, the time exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
That's what I was thinking he was referencing.
Yeah.
I was thinking more of like there's a bunch of steps that happen in this whole process. There's a pipeline, right? So like from the point where you actually paste prompt and assess this prompt to actually what gets decided to be picked up based on the grounding or the the freshness of the data that comes up at the time. Obviously, different models are trained on different time frames, so there's definitely an aspect of, okay, maybe I don't have this piece of information, I need to do a grounding search, right? So, or like I need to get the latest information on this topic. So this is the piece where like maybe the context or the push towards like how can we actually target different personas comes into play from the platform side. But again, kind of to the point that we're discussing, I think the closest thing that I've seen to memory is pretty much trying to like set up this environment where this whole report or measurement piece is focused on a specific persona, and that's what I think is relevant.
That's what I got, was the targeting piece, meaning targeting to the specific, in your case, Simon, with the toy room.
So yeah, we're building personas as well, both synthetic and also often panel based personas. So people
How
that
do
rate
just a question, because I've talked to different companies that have that. How do you get people to opt in? Are they incentivized in some way?
Third-party measurement solutions that have been in the business for a very long time.
Yep. Makes sense. That's cool.
Like clickstream, basically.
Or browser, or SDK.
So
there's a lot
like Disco.
Exactly.
Yep.
Disco.
Well, and important to note, because I know that all of you here at AI Insider is a very knowledgeable group. We're going to keep going through these questions, but if you have questions along the way, please feel free to drop them in, and we'll just go there along the way. This is a choose your adventure style situation. But I'd like
one thing, Caroline, I think,
Yeah.
just on Simon, I think it's super interesting. It's something we talk about quite a lot. Is like, we're in the first inning of all of this, but we talk about like what day 1000 looks like, and I think we're already starting to see it a little bit on the Gemini side. Is the concept of prompt and search. I don't know what that's going to look like in 3 years, right? And I think there's going to be a lot of context layering where it's like, hey, you live in Los Angeles, you have 2 kids, you're free this weekend, here's a movie to go see. So you're going to be served a lot more, and that is where I think it gets very tricky, because if you look at all the Gemini stuff that's happening right now, your daily brief or whatever they're calling it, what does that look like for brands in the world where like you're not even raising your hand and saying like, what should I do? It is looking at the full context of your whole history, and looking at your scheduling and looking at your trends and your beliefs and stuff like that. Like what do you want to do this weekend? And that's, they're going to be building schedules and recommending products and things like that, where that's where we're headed. And I think that's where I think that we're right now on the day, I would say, one of that. And it's important for like everyone on this call and like IAB and all of us to be thinking about, if that's where it's headed, what are the steps we have to take to be able to get there, to be comfortable in that space, because that space is going to be, we're going to be in that time.
So to clarify, we're at step 1 in your mind right now.
Maybe step 2, but
step 2.
Yeah.
Okay.
Unless the Gemini stuff happens very quickly. I mean, it's already starting to. I don't look at it, but I don't know if Simon or Ihab or even Caroline, if you guys do the daily brief, like from people.
Yeah, I look at mine because truthfully, my personal inbox is a bit of a mess, and it's more of a inbox curation solution, and it is somewhat useful. But also it's not, because it really does think I'm trying to plan a trip to Hawaii. And I was like, that was one night after a couple Sauvignon Blancs. Like, that was not actually a real thing. But I've been reminded of it for weeks now.
As we all know, anything that happens after 2 glasses of Sauvignon Blanc is actually critical.
Yeah.
So.
They should have a Sauvignon Blanc mode, actually, I think, within all these LLMs. So I can let it go.
AI mode, Blanc mode. Yeah. We've just invented something else.
Well, look, I do think there's a reality of context curation being something that users are going to want, and that brands are also going to want help to feed in terms of setting decay windows. We used to have, I think, a natural window of first-party cookies and expiration dates, and all the with third-party cookies less than, well, not even getting set, but it was always this shorter window. Now it's persistent forever. And you go, okay, so all my interests that I've ever been interested in are now still being fed back to me. It's interesting.
It's so funny how much privacy concerns we were so concerned about privacy like 3 years ago, and now it's out the window. It's like,
well, hold on, Ryby, hold on. Privacy is still important, but I will say that I think obviously in this new era that's shifting, because even when you were talking about memory, and Todd's in this chat also, Todd worked on an AI personalization project that we had. I don't know if Simon, you were in that working group, but the amount of conversations we had about personalization concerns that seem to just sort of like fall away when it's in AI are fascinating to me. So you're not wrong, but also privacy is important. I wanted to move on and just follow up with thinking about these 4 Ps that we went through. And I'd love to go to you, Simon. So just as a reminder, presence today, show up, Prominence, how prominently, Portrayal, in what way, and Persuasion, did the viewer do anything with that information? So as you're talking to brands, and also Justin, feel free to jump in on that. I'm just wondering, where are brands most fixated on their visibility right now, and why do you think that is?
I think well, at least in the conversations I've been having, it really is at presence. I think in part because that is the most observable component to them. It's the my boss is Googling himself problem, or herself problem, and the experience here is our brand even showing up in these moments in time, and now are we part of the conversation? I also think it is much harder the further you go down the path here, the harder it gets to measure. And when we talk about persuasion, I'm still very confused as to how to measure that. My background's measurement. This is what I love. I see Jim Stern on the call, measurement godfather here. So I'm sure you have many thoughts on this as well.
I'm overwhelmingly baffled on a daily basis.
Yes.
I've always thought that we started with hits, which is how idiots track success, and it's gotten worse from there.
It's very difficult. I had Mike King on my podcast a while back, and I was like, let's talk about measurement space. And he's like, it's all about clicks still. I'm like, okay. So there's still this focus on clicks. And I think that is why presence is also still so important, because they talk about citation click-through. That's not a helpful metric to me. It's not.
The question is, what is helpful? So if clicks can get you more budget, because that's all the budget holders understand, then it's a good metric.
Yeah.
Well, we've got a lot of questions in chat. Actually, Ricky went straight from presence all the way to post-citation CTR, which was under persuasion. So first of all, Ricky, thank you for reading the report. Clearly you did. Post-citation CTR was a tricky one in working group discussions, because if you all remember, there was some additional data that was necessary, but we wanted to get to the point of, what does all of this visibility do? And Jim, you just mentioned clicks, and so did you, Simon. So like along those lines, that's where we were trying to go. But Ricky says, curious your thoughts. What is the best way to measure post-citation CTR as part of presence and monitoring visibility? Google has been rolling out impressions by page and Search Console. Do we expect them to expand to clicks and CTR by query? I think versus thinking about what Google's doing, I would love to hear from you all on how you're thinking about this in your respective arenas.
And the question is, Caroline, that how we're thinking about it from a measurement standpoint. Is that what you're asking?
So how are you thinking? Post-citation CTR was under persuasion. Like, do they do anything with the information they're given in visibility? So how are you thinking about that? I would focus on you, Ihab, and you, Justin.
Yeah. For us, it's very vertical specific. So biotech and pharmaceuticals, yes, they want to have the presence piece of it, but it's very much making sure the accurate framing is there, because it's compliance concerns if like LLMs are spitting out things from a biotech or pharmaceutical standpoint that are not compliant. And so making sure there's the accurate conversations that are happening, less about click-through rates, but making sure that they're part of the conversation, because I think a lot, especially for those like highly research verticals, a lot of them have gated a lot of their information just out of the core business. And so if their voice is not out there and their data is not out there, then LLMs and AI is picking up from other sources, which causes a whole other set of issues for highly regulated industries. Hate to beat the entertainment like over the head, but it's entertainment, like LLMs miss genre of films 20% of the time. And so for studios, like if someone is going in and saying, hey, I want to see a film like Marty Supreme, and you are not getting, and your film is labeled as a violent thriller, or it's not like related to Marty Supreme, studios want to go there because people are like, especially the younger generation, is asking for recommendations. And so it's less about the click through, because especially in measurement, it's already wonky because of the streamers and all of the other kind of things, the ticket sales, the distributors, Fandango, all the other stuff. So like they're used to being flying blind in this world, because they're highly reliant on third party kind of data sets to bring back to them, and some of those streamers are very limited. I would say for B2B, like what I've seen is them asking about like putting a survey when someone signs up for a demo or for a product offering, and where did you come in from? And they either have to say like search, social, like, and they'll be part of the question too is like, did you research this on LLMs or AI? And the stats coming out of that are pretty insane, to be honest. I think that even if they're coming in through organic channels, there's always some sort of like not always, but there's a large majority of them have already done that research on LLMs at some point, or been exposed to AI at some point. So I think marketers are finding ways to stitch this together. And yeah, I know, Simon, that probably makes the hair on the back of your neck stick up a little bit because it's not clear, like it's not a clear line. But I think we're finding like hacky ways to fully understand that zero click world that we're into. And like, I don't know if post CTR, post like citation CTR is like the best metric to be looking at, but like I think it's highly dependent on the vertical that you talk to. Does that make sense?
It does. And I want to turn to you, Ihab, but I also will plug the fact that we're now looking at attribution, which you just brought up. And of the data that we're looking at, search and direct traffic go miscategorized quite highly out of all of them as dark AI traffic that really was influenced by AI, but maybe you, Justin, came back 7 days later and typed it in and did, I think that's fascinating because, again, if I was still brand side, I would want to know that to make the right types of budget decisions. And a lot of it is getting skewed in analytics reports. So that's something that we're spending time on now. But Ihab, on the Microsoft AI side, how are you thinking about this idea of like persuasion, and do users do anything with the information they're being given?
Yeah, and I agree that we're on the point of attribution, we're still working on this together, Caroline and the TV. But there's definitely this gap in the market where all these platforms barely provide any information or access to the CTR data. Maybe because it's low, maybe because for any other reason. But ultimately, all these post CTR traffic are tracked by referrals. So the way at least we're thinking about it is if it's coming from an AI referred platform, and that's also very subjective to the platform, whether they provide that information or not, whether it gets stripped off because of any reason, whether the browser itself, when you land on the site or the brand site, it doesn't recognize it or doesn't see it. That all affects, and there's fragmentation. Earlier, there was only two major, search engines that you could detect and traffic coming from. Now there's like a bunch of AI platforms out there. So I think the attribution piece comes next, and the way I believe that one would need to think about is the attribution window. If a user comes in from an AI platform today and then makes a purchase in 7 days, maybe that's how we would attribute that. Or maybe it's 3 days. Like, it depends on every business, every vertical. Like if I'm looking at buying a yacht, I wouldn't buy it immediately 7 days later after seeing, someone come to my site, right? So
Ihab is taking us all in his yacht.
Yeah, so I don't want to like jump into attribution because that hasn't been covered in this framework, but I think attribution definitely is what we need to be thinking about for post-click.
For sure.
Yeah.
And I also want to pick up, Dave, hopefully I got your last name. Is it Nadal or Nadal? Either is good. Okay. So his question is, since we know that LLMs are probabilistic and also have the user level context and history, doesn't that introduce bias into the data, confirmation bias? I would love to hear from, we did talk about bias in our working group conversations, but how do you think about it on your respective ends?
I think it absolutely does introduce contamination. I think we are living in an imperfect world, though, and this has always been a fundamental constraint of an ecosystem that doesn't allow for any kind of geo holdouts. I think SEO and now AI SEO got left behind in the incrementality transition era, and this is a moment in time where there's expectations of granular causality associated with what we're seeing in media and outcomes, and that just doesn't exist here. So yes, there is noise here, and I think the question is how much noise can you stomach, and how comfortable are you going full directional, knowing that these experiments are constantly being, you need like a triple blind, right? Like everyone needs to be blinded multiple times in this scenario, and then you need to have context windows removed constantly and so forth. But even then, what are you measuring? That's not real. No one's using LLM for the first time today ever. Everyone has stored context, so it's all very, very lab driven right now. And I honestly, it gives me a lot of pause, but I also go, okay, everyone's dealing with the same constraints. Let's look at this from the sort of first principles perspective of what ingredients we put in the system. And that's why I really like Amazon had a white paper a couple years ago about Cosmo. And I really took that to heart in terms of how they think about ranking factors and essentially quality of signal. And we just look at that and we just observe it in these small environments and go, we're doing the right things, we're making the right plays. And to quote Rand Fishkin from many years ago, when we were going through from links to the importance of content and influence, we're investing in serendipity.
That makes sense. Ehab, I just want to ask you one question about publishers, because I feel like we haven't really gotten there yet. How are publishers like the New York Times, the Atlantic, name a publisher, Wall Street Journal, People Inc., how are they thinking about visibility different from, say, how a brand is thinking about visibility?
Yeah. That's a great question. I think if you look at it from a perspective of e-commerce or brands and businesses, they're mainly behind, like, the ultimate goal for them is conversion, right? And conversion does apply to both. So in effect, they're both after the same goal, but that goal differs from one industry to another, and it differs from e-commerce and brands to publishers. The goal in businesses and brands is that they want to ultimately sell to their customers, right, and their end users. So let's say you're a shoe brand. True brands think about appearance. They want to know where they rank. They want to know how, who else ranks next to them, and whether or not they're portrayed in a sense that helps, their goals be achieved, which is sell eventually their shoes, right? But from a perspective of publishers, let's say, for an example, National Geographic, right? Like, they care more about whether they're being cited. How, is their content actually being utilized in the right fashion? Are they actually being portrayed? Here, portrayal is more of like, is it actually being accurately mentioned? And Persuasion here kind of is a bit different, because ultimately they would want, they're running after one, having those end users kind of land on their sites, because ultimately they're after human eyeballs, because that's how they drive monetization, whether it's from ads or effectively signing up for a membership or a subscription, or whatnot, right? So here there's that other lens that we need to look at, and they care more about citations, because you can actually say that National Geographic mentioned X, Y, and Z, but what's more powerful from a publisher's perspective is actually realizing that their content has authority in these AI platforms and is being used as a credible source, and it's continued to being used. And in effect, they care more about protecting that content and monetizing that content. So when they come to assess at the end of the day, they're probably questioning, is my content being utilized by these AI platforms? That means it's credible, and therefore that means it's valuable to those, platforms. And should I be licensing them? Should I be placing them behind the paywall? How much should I share with those? So there's different end goals as well for publishers. It differs whether you're a big, publisher, or like you're a small recipe store, right? So, or recipe site. So they vary in that sense.
So if I were to prioritize it, just to clarify, right? There's on the New York Times, I come up as a citation link. Awesome. Okay. I'm the New York Times and my reporting is used in the answer, but I don't have a citation link, right? Not as awesome. And then there's I'm the New York Times, and I am named in the answer and maybe not the citation link. So from what I heard from you, and please correct me if I'm off on this, it sounds like the citation link is the number one what they're looking for. Is that right?
I mean, I think it is definitely one of the most important things they're looking for, as opposed to being mentioned, right? Because ultimately, that content can be licensed and that content can be monetized in that fashion, right? But also, I think one of the most important things that I haven't seen many do, which is trying to help those publishers understand how much of their content actually shaped the answer. So how much has it contributed to the answer? Maybe you're one of three. Maybe you're the only one being cited in this category or topic. So that gives you some sort of understanding as to, like, this is your content and this is your value in this new era. Their weight. Yes, exactly.
Their weight. Yeah.
I talked to actually Time yesterday because it was super interesting. And for those of you who don't know, the Mobian piece, and maybe Simon, you could put that in there in the chat for everyone, because I'm sure you were looking at. But they're doing ads to agents, which I'm not sure if you guys have seen this. Still very early days, but I think from a publisher perspective, at least the publishers that I've talked to, it's a tough business to be in. And I think they're all trying to figure out, like, do we block? Do we kind of let a portion of it out to the LLMs? Like, but I think the more data, I think that companies can bring to the publishers and say, hey, this is help your citation rate across 5,000 brands, 10,000 brands, a million brands, whatever it is. Like, that will help them understand how much of their content that needs to be licensed back to the labs specifically. I do think there's going to be a ton of innovation, and I think the Mobian piece that just was popped in there is the first crack on that, because they want to be playing in the game, because they don't want to be effectively locked out of this net new world. And I come from Google. Spent about a decade there. Love Google. Have a great relationship with Google. But, like, let's call it what it is. Google wants the web experience to live in AI mode. And so, what does that mean for publishers? Like, what does that mean for?
Hold on.
Yeah.
Can I just ask, don't consumers, like, based on what we see from consumers, don't we, all of us, want generally AI mode? Or, because you mentioned Google, right? But that company aside, isn't it that we the people, aren't we demanding this synthesized answer?
Does my mom want it? No.
Really? Because my mom thinks she's doing AI when she gets an overview all the time, because I've demanded that she try it.
My mom doesn't want it. My dad doesn't want it. They're like, I want traditional 20 blue links. They want to do their own. It's just change, right? So I think there's certain, like, this group in particular is very AI forward. We're in it every single day. So I think what we want is very different than large populations of portions of the population. So I think you have to think about it in that type of context. But I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know exactly what Google wants, but it's looking to me that they want to have AI mode to have the kind of that web experience look in there. So I think, like, to my original point, I just think there's going to be a ton of innovation from the ads front, from brands connecting directly to publishers, like trying to do sponsor content deals because they know that they will get cited more in the LLMs. And, like, I just think there's a lot there that's going to happen. We'll probably see that landscape really, and it's just get it wrong all the time. Yep, that's true. So yeah, I just think that we're going to, probably the next 12 to 18 months, we're going to see a lot of toast time Mobian type things that pop up, because I think everyone's trying to figure it out, and the publishers want an incremental revenue stream. They want to play in this space as well. So
yes, sorry, if I could just add one note on there, and that is, absolutely, I think they do. I think what we're also observing simultaneously, the LLMs trying to mitigate prompt injection, or what they're framing as
Cloaking.
this, and cloaking, and this idea of I guess unnatural inclusion of information. And I think that's where things do start to get really difficult, though, because I was having a conversation with a client about this last week. And so she was like, so we work with a number of YouTube influencers. What if we just, like, pay them more, just do these native ad reads? And I was like, Yeah, those ones are really hard to pick up. That is native content. And you're right. These YouTubers are the ones who are getting picked up in the citations and are influencing
Or
not
Reddit.
just about your brand, but the category at large. Right. And on Reddit, and you start to look at that and go, huh, okay. So maybe it wouldn't be in those ads, but it is going to be in the form of what these influencers are doing and how those ads are going to be showing up. So maybe we see more influencer networks come out of the publishers as well.
We're focusing a lot on the creator stuff right now.
Yeah.
We like the creators are when publishers are starting to push back, and there's a lot of articles out there around gating, blocking the LLMs until they can figure out kind of what the there's a gap that needs to be filled, right? And that gap then is getting filled by creators or UGC and like just all those things. And that gap right now is we're seeing it across a ton of different verticals where YouTube, maybe even creators that brands don't even have direct deals with, they're still getting cited in the LLMs, or they're like, here's the creators that you boys work with. They get cited on other things, but they're not getting cited for you. So you need to restructure the way that you actually work with them.
Yeah.
That needs to have a clean title and needs to have a clean description because it's going to get picked up through the LLMs more.
Blessing and a curse, though, because this is what I want to ask you. Okay. Blessing and a curse, because you just mentioned they may not work with those creators, right? So let's go to another part of this, that this is the stuff that would, keep me up at night as a brand, right? Let's say a creator says something about, I know, Justin, you love to talk about entertainment. So do I. So I'm going to talk about my favorite show, Friends and Neighbors, right? Let's say creators were talking about that show because John Hamm, right? John Hamm. Let's say they're talking about that show as if it was like Widow's Bay horror, okay? Right? That has huge implications. It's not factually correct, but let's just say they thought it was funny and they did a video that way and it was picked up in the citation. Like, how are you thinking about the point of portrayal, be it from a hallucination perspective, from, having information pulled through that may or may not be correct? You mentioned sentiment and framing, Justin, also. Like, how are you in your respective arenas thinking about this layer? Because somebody even in the comments said, sometimes the AI answer aren't correct. True.
A lot of times. So we look at it down the site. So if we look at true scores, hallucination rates, and this concept of AI identity, which is like the genre piece and product positioning and narrative and all these other things. So it's no different from a YouTube creator than you and I going to Reddit and just like inaccurately putting the price into how much Hulu is. It's still going to get picked up, and maybe there'll be some sort of like because there's more of a footprint of the pricing for like what Hulu is, but like there's going to be hallucinations or inaccuracies that happen on Reddit, on LinkedIn, on all these. When you get a human involved, there's always that issue. Where I think we can play and where I think it's starting to happen, I'm very curious to your point of view on this, Simon, but it is we can flag that this creator is getting picked up in the citations, and is this the right framing? And if it isn't, then the brand needs to reach out to that creator directly and ask for a revision or do another type of brand or do a brand deal with them.
That's the exact part. Hold on. What? That would keep me up at night because that what you just said would be a nightmare for a brand because scale the internet of potential inaccuracies. Now add synthetic data to that mix, and you're expected to a one-on-one go one by one and just
but I think you're talking about very like edge cases. To be honest, it's an edge case. Like a majority of creators are not going out there and doing falsified information.
Today we're talking AI creators, Justin.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I have more of an optimistic view of this world but like I would hope.
I'm not a cynic. I'm just a realist.
I think it's an opportunity for both brands and because creators historically have been, looked at from reach and share and likes and affiliated sales and all those other things. I think the new metric that they're going to be looking at in the next 12 months is citations. Because they understand that they're smart and they know how to they know where the buck is going, and so I think you're already seeing there's a couple of cool, great articles on Digiday and App Week, probably in the last couple of weeks just on it. But the smart creators are already thinking about it, and they're building their own little like vibe coded GEO tools to like figure out how they can play in the space even more. But there's all those issues with that. But like I do think that they're going to be taking a bigger role in a lot of these conversations, to be honest.
And you know what's interesting about that? One thing that I have started to discover are what I'm calling hidden influences. And these are folks that don't necessarily have a big social presence. I found one recently. We work with a public company that sells children's vitamins. Children's vitamins are wonderful because they give children health, but also dentists don't really like them because they're often sugary because you got to make the kids eat them. And there was a dentist in South Carolina that I found who was influencing one of the largest company in the United States, one of the vitamin brands. She is almost entirely owning the AI overview coverage about their brand. She doesn't even know she's an influencer. And that is where I think there's a really interesting opportunity here, is not to go after the traditional influencers, but to find these folks who are subject matter experts and have that authority. The problem is they are not part of these influencer networks where you can do broad outreach. Those are the
ones you're going to have to go through. Yeah, I mean, we're seeing videos kind of have like 200 views on it. Yeah.
Which is wild. Everyone's an influencer now.
Well, it's the true democratization. But Todd had an interesting question in the chat here. What % of replies are more relevant and reliable for consumers? AI overviews or paid links on keywords by advertisers? No AI.
I think I'm trying to understand the question a lot.
Todd, are you here? Do you want to come off mute?
Yeah, it's and I know it's evolving with AI overviews, but if you think about what is truly helping the consumer, and we'll just keep it to Google for now, keep it simpler. But if they're searching for an answer, for a solution, for information, what is more reliable for them? Is it the AI overviews right now as it stands, or is it the pre-AI way, or just the paid sponsored links
Paid search
the advertisers are doing?
Is that the paid ads? That's what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Like traditional SEM, so you're basically looking at, yeah. So, I guess I like the question, but I don't think it matters anymore, right? Because every consumer is now getting, depending on the vertical, they're getting an AI overview. So even if it's more relevant or reliable, that option is no longer existing.
Sure, I get the question would be, is that a good thing right now? Because there's a lot of like, hey, AI sucks, but is it better than what we had? Maybe. I'm just
depends who you're talking to.
Well, it depends also how important is the subject. Is it medical advice that it is maybe misdirected, or is it highly opinionated anyway about how good a band it is to see in concert, right? Like I really, honestly, where I get really blurry here, and where I think Justin, as you're saying, like, doesn't matter. Like, there is this question around the ad experience that Google is leaning into now is not one that is that advertiser curated, frankly. It is one that is written by them. They are looking to go with hyper customized ad experiences. That was the whole GML update about ad customization, where they're essentially putting 500 characters in an ad unit now that no one has ever seen before. So brands like the approval there, and it's basically an extension of the AI overview. It's just paying to get that placement. So I'll call that maybe like you're basically just paying for citation visibility at that point, because the ad's only relevant because it's coming through in the original response anyway, which is the really interesting thing about this, is how influential the AI overview is to that ad experience.
Because their official position is there's no influence, but you're saying...
No. Their official position is that there absolutely is influence.
With the paid ad inside the LLM, or the paid ad...
That the AI overview is influencing the paid ad.
Okay. Yes, that's not what I was talking about.
Sorry, not the other way around.
Not the other way around.
But there is this conversation around, but they want to make those ads really engaging, and so they make them into AI overviews, and then you start to see this blurring of the two, and you're like, okay, so like that's coming from the same knowledge source. This is interesting.
Well, I think we're coming up on time. Does anyone, I mean, I can keep asking my questions here, but does anyone have a last question? Okay, so here's what I would ask, and I want to go back to Ihab, because like Ihab, I feel like I need to pick you back up into this conversation. Like, what can the metrics not tell a publisher about how their content is shaping AI systems? So going back to the Atlantic situation, like where do these metrics fall short of what they need to know from AI platforms today?
I think for one, for starters, there's the click side, right? Like that's something that no one kind of has visibility into, and that's very difficult for one of for a brand or a business to really understand the true click through. But like I think the other aspect is the true contribution from those citations as well. Like you see a lot of citations that happen for the same exact piece of content in an answer. like you have 3 different sources, but you actually don't know which one contributed to this more, right? So there's the cross-source contribution aspect that is sort of very difficult, and no one can really measure at this point, because not only does the AI pick up that information, but it kind of resummarizes it, regenerates that response tailored back to the user and the answer. So I think for these two, I would say that they're the 2 main things that one can't really determine. Obviously, when it comes to like the grander picture, each platform has its own context, its own training. So there's a lot of variation, and multimodal visibility is super difficult. And I haven't really seen a vendor out there that kind of comes and says, okay, you know what, you're actually dropping very low in this version of this model, or you're up in this model, and what changed and why did it change. So that's also something that's very difficult for one to measure.
I feel like that's something for Justin to take away also his conversations. Well, David, I think we're at time. I could go all day with you smart people, but gotta go eventually.
Yeah, I could go all day listening to that. I mean, and this is such a treat. So appreciate all of this. And
I want to just say a big thank you to Ihab, Simon, and Justin. Like I said at the beginning of this, are the smarter folks in the room than me. I'm just talking about me.
It's not a competition, okay? So I won't.
No, I give it to them.
Yeah, I can't totally agree with that, even if they brought a lot of smarts. But obviously, you do tons of that through your work with IAB and everything else that you do in this industry. So, Caroline, thank you for continuing your amazing track record as our most frequent guest, and Ihab, Simon, Justin. Just such a blast learning from you all. Everyone in the room loving the conversation as always. So looking forward to see you next week and many future weeks. And Caroline, I mean it when it's an open invite. So can't wait to have you back again. And we'll see if Nate Elliott from eMarketer winds up giving you a run for your money.
We should just do one together, Nate and I. I know he would love it.
Wow, this is like a greatest hits week. I don't know if we're ready for that, but open to just totally breaking the model here. So thank you, everyone. Such a treat, and look forward to continue to learn from you all.